What happens when a new director fires an outdated employee, not knowing he's the only one who truly understands how their system works? You won't believe how calmly this man turned the tables in the most unexpected way. What happened next left the entire team completely stunned. Monday, I brought a cake to the office. Red velvet as usual. 15 years in a row, the same tradition. When you stay at the same company longer than most bosses, tradition is all you have left. I didn't consider myself a hero. Just an aging project coordinator who knew the insides of this system better than his own mailbox. I was on time. I left later than everyone else. Didn't ask for anything. Sometimes I'd fill in for the sick. Sometimes I covered other people's joints. Nobody clapped much, but hell, nobody complained. So I come back. I go into the open space. Cake in one hand, coffee in the other. And it's quiet. Too quiet. Not one look. Not one, "Hey, David," or "Happy anniversary, man." I thought maybe everyone knew, and they were planning a surprise. But instead of Carol, there's a girl at reception with a stone sphinx face. She's new. Didn't recognize her? Or does she just not care? I walk by like a ghost. Even the copier didn't flinch when I approached. And then I see the light on in Hank's office. And there's some stranger in a suit with a clock shining like a Christmas tree, staring at the monitor like he's saving the world. I knock, and he doesn't even look up. "Good morning," I said. "Who are you?" That's a question. I stood there staring, not believing my ears. David West. Coordinator. Since 2010. I'm the lead. Okay, he's interrupting. Michael Royce. The new director. I'm holding a town hall meeting today. Be there on time. Turned back to the screen. It was like I no longer existed. The general meeting was like a funeral for common sense. Michael spoke like he was reading out a prayer from an Excel file. Optimization. Consolidation. Efficiency. Duplicate functions. When he said, "Some will be called individually," I felt something inside clench. I was called in the same day. He made no pretense. Just put a sheet in front of me. Notice of termination. Effective today. Reason, restructuring. I almost laughed. 15 years. 15 years, and just like that? And my projects? You can't do it without? Everything's already been handed over, he said. That's all. I went out. The hallway was quiet. Melanie, my former ward, was sorting my things into a box. Like an orderly in the morgue. She didn't look up. I wanted to say something. But there was a lump in my throat. Like I hadn't just been fired. I'd been expelled. Without a name. No thanks. Not even a goddamn thank you. That evening I sat in the kitchen, staring at the monitor and couldn't feel my fingers. All I could think was, what the hell just happened? And then it rang in my head, you knew something he didn't. And I grinned for the first time all day. I didn't sleep that night. I tried to, but my thoughts rattled around in my head like an old washing machine on spin cycle. 15 years. No weekends. No scandals. No, I quit on Friday. 15 years in which I invested more than I did in my own family. And I was tossed out like a broken printer. Not even recycling bin. Just delete. Turned on my laptop this morning. Automatically. Like a soldier used to combat. Email, Slack, the server, all no longer available. Just emptiness. And a strange silence. I decided to go to the office. Get the rest of my stuff. A flash drive, a notebook, a mug with the inscription, Chief of Bugs. I'm standing at the front desk, same new girl. She looks past me like I'm a piece of furniture. Pass, she says. I don't have a pass anymore, I reply. I'm the former coordinator, David West. You were supposed to be on the deleted list. Just a minute. She makes a couple of calls, then nods to the guard. He looks at me like I'm a thief and nods toward the turnstile. I feel like I've walked into someone else's house. Melanie is standing by my former desk. Folders, charts, my notes all already in her box. I come closer. Hey Mel, can you give me 5 minutes? She flinches. She pretends she didn't hear me. Stares at the monitor, clicks her mouse like it'll make her disappear. 5 minutes, I repeat. No screaming. No emotion. I'm not allowed to talk to you, she answers quietly. That's what they said. And your conscience told you to keep quiet, didn't it? She doesn't say anything. I turn and walk away. Because at that moment I realize, they knew everything. All of them. They just chose not to get involved. They were afraid. In the car, I turn on the radio. QSYS completes takeover of Euronet. Then a report on the new course and the strong management team. I hear the name Michael Royce. I feel my insides boiling again. And that's when I remember a forgotten folder on an old hard drive. A folder that holds more than just files. Something more important. Something none of them know. They should. I turn on the old computer. And I smile. I've always had this weird principle. If you work with your head, keep it to yourself. Not because I'm paranoid. But because if you're in IT and you're in your 40s, you're either irreplaceable or fired. So, over the years, I've amassed quite a collection of useful stuff. Scripts, automations, protocols, even internal workarounds to system limitations that saved the department hours and money. And, of course, no one ever formalized them. Everything was between us. I look at the code and I don't recognize myself. Was it me? Was it me who wrote such reliable integrators that new projects just wouldn't take off without them? That's me. And now it's all in their hands. Or at least that's what they think. I spent 2 days structuring everything on the disk. I sorted it, what I created myself, where my signatures were, where the timestamps on the servers prove authorship. Everything with comments, screenshots, changelogs. And you know what? Without those modules, they can't get any of the new projects up and running. Especially CR7. The biggest, most expensive. A project I've invested 2 years of my life, night shifts, dozens of nervous breakdowns and a half-burned liver. And that's when I wanted to know, what will they tell the client when it's up? I got an email this evening. From a contractor in Germany. An old partner in the CR7 project. David, good evening. We've received the mock-up on the new integration. It still has your name on it. Can we get back to you? We have some questions about the architecture. What? My name? On the paperwork? After you're fired? They're using my work. I'm out, but the project is still under my signature. Well, I guess it's time to remind them who built this place. So I started writing a letter. No hysteria. Just the facts. Who designed what, when, exactly? Where it lies? Who will confirm it? I sent copies to 3 legal entities. And then I sat in my armchair and turned on the TV for the first time in 10 days. There was a documentary on the channel about a man who had first been pushed out of the corporation and then recognized as a legend of the industry. Yeah, I said into the screen. Nice to meet you, colleague. The next morning, I decided to go even further. I didn't just sit around and wait. I logged into an old account on a developer platform where I used to post templates. I looked. Some of my solutions have been downloaded over 300 times, and one plugin has 1,000 likes and comments from people who have really benefited from it. People I never knew. I started writing to them. Everyone who left feedback. Who mentioned my nickname in the acknowledgements. All I asked for was a brief acknowledgement that they had used my designs, and that they were authors' solutions, not corporate designs. 28 people responded. And that's just in half a day. These responses, simple, honest, lively, became my armor. Not paper, not legal, but human. And that's when I realized clearly for the first time that everything they tried to take away from me, respect, authorship, name, they can't take away. Because I'm not a corporate line on a list. I'm a person. I'm David West. And if any of them think they can just throw away 15 years under the guise of restructuring, they'll soon realize how strong the memory is of people who actually know who's in charge of what. I turned off the screen. I stood up. I stretched. And realized one simple thing. I wasn't burned out. I wasn't broken. I had been tried to be erased, but instead, I was clearer. Like an old drawing that only seems faded until you hold it up to the light. Now there was only one thing I wanted. For them to look at the light too. And close their eyes. What happened next changed everything. Subscribe and stay, you won't want to miss how it unfolded. The first morning after my letter was surprisingly, quiet. Too quiet. It's not the kind of quiet where everything is under control. It's the kind where someone takes a deep breath before the storm hits. I felt it in my gut. A man who's been thrown out of the system always has a keen sense of intuition. You don't just get fired, you lose access to the world you've invested in. But I had an ace up my sleeve. And its name was evidence. Digital traces. Logs. Time stamps. Even internal documents that said, in black and white, responsible, D. West. If you're an old-school programmer, you always leave a trail. Not because you're paranoid. Because experience. On Tuesday, the first email arrived. From the very same contractor, a German company called Newback IT. We'd worked together on C7. I opened it without too many expectations. And there it was, in a polite but very cautious tone. We would like to confirm that the project documentation still lists your name as the main architect. Would we be able to clarify the status of the engagement before proceeding? Well done. Cautious. The Germans, they always walk on ice with a pole. But I had a counter question. Who gave them the documents with my name on them in the first place? I was fired, but they kept using my name? I answered calmly. Clearly, no hysteria. That I was not an employee of the company. That using my name without authorization is at minimum unethical and at maximum legally shaky. And at the same time, I gently hinted that, I have archives. With dates. With sources. With server logs. Just in case. An hour later, I got a reply. With a thank you. And a copy of the letter where my name was actually used in official correspondence. I looked at it and thought, this is it. Here we go. The next step was to make sure my contribution was not only valuable, but irreplaceable. I opened up the archives and started making a detailed matrix. What modules I had created, where they were integrated, who on the team was using them, and how things would lie without them. It took 3 days. But the result was like hitting the office carpet with a sledgehammer. Without my solutions, C7 won't take off. Without my scripts, the monitoring won't run. Without my engine, reporting would fall apart like a house of cards in a draft. And that's when I wondered if they knew what they were getting into. I wrote another letter. To the legal department. Polite but firm. No threats. Simply, I hereby notify you that some of the code and design solutions used in current QSYS initiatives are my intellectual property. In the event of further use, please pre-approve any external demonstrations, especially those involving third parties. There was no response. 2 days later, however, I received a phone call. From an unknown number. A woman with a husky voice. Mr. West? This is Marcia Trend from Euronet's legal department. Comfortable talking? Depends on the subject. If it's an advertising survey, no. If it's an admission of guilt, I'm ready to listen. She didn't laugh. She's never laughed. We'd like to organize an informal meeting to discuss the possibility of preventing further misunderstandings. Misunderstandings? That's corporate gold. I agreed, just to look them in the eye. The meeting took place in a small glass conference room in an out-of-town law office. Marcia sat across from me, in a suit the color of moldy asphalt, flipping through papers as if I'd come for a loan, not the truth. Next to her was a man in his 30s, as silent as a poorly tuned fax machine. Apparently a junior lawyer. Or just a hostage to the system. We realize the situation is complicated, Marcia began. And we don't want it to escalate. And I do, I cut her off. Not for conflict. But for clarity. Who made the decision to use my materials after I was fired? Marcia crossed her arms and raised her chin, the classic pose of corporate infallibility. It had to do with an internal transfer of tasks. It wasn't intended to violate your rights. But you did. We're considering compensation. There it is. The first tremor in the air. The first whiff of fear. Compensation? How about an apology? How about an official acknowledgement that the CR7 project will fall apart faster than the coffee machine in your waiting room without my decisions? Silence. What do you want, Mr. West? I'm up. I went to the window. Looked out at the street. I want you to understand one simple thing. I'm not a line item on a budget. I'm a human being. I didn't just push buttons. I created the system that you now use like it's your coffee and your cake on break. and I'm just a crumb on the floor. Marcia was silent. The lawyer gave a fake cough. Is that it? I turned around. Oh, it's a start. I hope you're ready. I walked out without saying goodbye. The door slammed behind me. The cold air hit my face. But it felt hot inside. Because I felt something had shifted. The next morning I woke up earlier than usual. Not from the alarm clock, but from the feeling that I felt a tingling inside. That feeling when you're not just angry, you're ready to turn the system inside out if it tries to pry into your soul again without permission. I sat down at my laptop and opened LinkedIn. The QSWS page was flashing fake smiles. A new director in the arms of an innovation team. In the center, Melanie. The same one who silently packed my bags. Signed, Integration Team Leader Coordinating CR7 Architecture. 15 years of my labor and now it's Melanie's architecture? I didn't write her. I didn't. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew words wouldn't penetrate the corporate bulletproof vest. Where once there were people, now there are positions and job descriptions. But I knew something else. One step and that glossy cover would crack. I wrote an article. A short one. No insults. Just the facts. How the project evolved. Who was behind it? Where are the confirmations? And who continues to use the name of a fired employee to sign contracts? I didn't name names. But those in the know understood. 2 hours later, the article had over 200 reposts. 6 hours later, mentions in the news feeds of several tech blogs. A day later, a call from a former contractor in the States. David, I didn't know you'd been fired. We're just discussing the CR7 extension. Tell me honestly, is the project really going ahead without you? Let them try. I'm not being vindictive. I'm just observing. I started getting messages from former colleagues. Some were short. Sorry, I didn't know it was like this. Some didn't say a word. And some sent insights. Royce is in a panic. The legal department is in a tizzy. Melanie is avoiding meetings. But I wasn't amused anymore. This wasn't about revenge. It was about principle. About how you can't just take a person and toss them out like they're an extra line in the balance sheet. I took a break. I went to the park. For the first time in 2 weeks, I let myself just walk without checking email or looking at a screen. Sat down on a bench. Inhaled. Breathed out. And that's when, on the bench between 2 bushes and 1 stray pigeon, it hit me. It wasn't me who lost. It was them. Because I remained human. And they had become a shadow of their position. In the evening, I received another letter. From a journalist. He worked for a business publication. He wanted a comment on the QSYS situation. I didn't respond right away. I reread my letter to the legal department first. And then I reread the article I'd written myself. And I realized there's nothing to comment on. Everything has already been said. The truth needs no explanation. It's just there. Before I went to bed, I went back to my article. There were dozens of stories in the comments. People wrote about how they had been thrown out, betrayed, erased from corporate photo albums. Someone even wrote, "You gave me the strength to not be silent." I read it out loud. And then I closed my laptop. And I went to sleep. And the next morning, I got up feeling like I'd thrown an old, wet jacket off my shoulders. The very one that is soaked with corporate dust, unspoken complaints, and fake congratulations. It's not mine anymore. And I don't want it back. I'm writing my story now. Unabridged. No approvals. And if anyone out there in the glass tower still thinks that by firing me they've removed the problem, let them hope so. I'm gonna move on. With a straight back. And my last name in the headline. Because a name isn't something you're given. It's what you stand for. It's the culmination. Everything you've been waiting for is right here. Subscribe now to see the hero put everyone in their place. When I got a call from a key contractor's office the next morning saying they canceled the CR7 presentation. Something went wrong, I wasn't surprised. I didn't even smile. Just poured myself a cup of coffee. Slowly. No sugar. And looked out the window. Because I knew this was just the beginning. A system built on lies and stolen ideas can't survive for long. Especially if its foundation is someone else's work, signed in someone else's name. And now it's starting to crack. Not from the outside, but from the inside. Because lies are always delayed. The letter from the lawyers came the same day. As polite as a "do not tread on the lawn" sign, and as hypocritical. They offered to resolve the matter offline, without involving third parties. No scandal. Of course. As long as I kept quiet, it was convenient. And now that my article has gone viral on the blogs, when a couple of business publications have started asking uncomfortable questions, they've decided it's better to talk. Over coffee. Preferably quietly. No notes. Royce was at the meeting. In person. The same guy in the shiny shoes who'd looked at me the first day like worn-out furniture. He looked different now. Less puffed up. More sweaty. "Look, David," he began, not even waiting for coffee. "We're both adults. We don't need this circus. The circus is when you made me invisible. And I turned out to be a mirror," I said. He stopped talking. He tried to find the words. PR and legal were fighting inside him. "We can formalize an agreement. Financial. No confession. But compensation. And an NDA, of course?" "Well, that's standard." "No, Michael. It's not standard. Because this story isn't about money. It's about dignity. And you're not paying me back for it. Not with a transfer, not with a bonus. It should have been respected before you decided to throw me out." He pressed his lips together. For a second, I saw in his eyes not fear. Tiredness. Maybe even remorse. But it didn't matter anymore. Because the train had left. And I'm not the baggage in that car. After the meeting, I went outside and, for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel angry. I felt complete. Like I'd finally closed the lid on an old briefcase. Not because someone had admitted guilt. It was because I'd stopped waiting for that admission. I don't need it anymore. That evening, I got an email. From the same intern who handed me my first bug report a year ago with trembling hands. She was now working at another firm. She wrote, "You were the first person to treat me like a human being. Just thank you. If you ever start your own business, let me know." I reread that letter 3 times. And suddenly I realized, this is what it was all worth going through all this for. Not for the article. Not for the fight with the lawyers. It was to be a human being. To remain someone who is remembered not by a name tag, but by the way you talk to them when they didn't know where to press. The next morning, I opened my laptop and created a new project. No corporate logos. No taglines. Just code. My code. And a name in the upper right-hand corner. Not in small print. Not in gray text. It's in black and white. As it should be. There was another letter in the mail. From an investor. We crossed paths at a conference a couple years ago. He'd read my article. "If you have something you want to work on, I'm ready to hear. People like you shouldn't disappear. You should be building." I closed the letter. I took a breath. And I realized it was time. It's time to gather those who have been thrown out. It's time to build again. But in a human way. So I started writing. No plans, no budget, no marketing department, no endless meetings. I just sat down and wrote the first line. Then I wrote the second. Then the 37th. I didn't know where it would lead, but for the first time in a long time, I wrote not because I had to. I wrote because I wanted to. Friends and former colleagues began to pull in. One wrote, "I got out because I got tired of sitting on desk duty while Royce hung out on a business trip with Melanie." Another said, "If you're building something of your own, I'm with you. I know who you are." These were not rantings. They were the voices of people who were tired of being silent. Inside me, where emptiness had sat not so long ago, there was now something different. Not euphoria. Not revenge. It was clarity. The knowledge that you were finally acting of your own free will, not someone else's procedure. While I was writing the code, the first official statement from QSWS popped up in the news. Due to the revision of the CR7 architecture, implementation is temporarily suspended. No comments are provided. They could have just written, "We screwed up." But apparently they were hoping to save face even now. Topics started popping up in the forums and chat rooms. Why is CR7 frozen? Who actually wrote the backend? Where is West now? I didn't respond. Let them talk. Sometimes silence is louder than any tweets. But one comment I saw and copied into my notebook. When a system is built by an individual, it is seen. When a committee builds it, all that's left is a piece of paper. I printed it out and hung it above my monitor. Because it was about me. A week later, I received an invitation to a conference in Seattle. The topic was independent software and development outside of corporations. At first I wanted to decline. I'm not a fan of microphones and glowing screens. But then I thought, why not? Not because I want to shine, but because maybe someone in the audience is sitting in the same position as I was recently. At the speech, I spoke simply. No slides. No quotes from Steve Jobs. Just the facts. Just a personal journey. From the morning I brought the cake to the moment I closed the first independent ticket of my new project. There was silence in the room. Not sepulchral, no. The kind where people don't listen with their ears, but with their hearts. After the performance, a man came up to me. He looked about 60. Gray hair, good shoes, notebook in hand. "Mr. West," he said, "I worked at IBM for 30 years. Quit with a bang. I thought I was done. And today you reminded me who I am. Thank you." I shook his hand. I shook his hand. Because I knew those words were worth more than any likes. That night, I went back to my room and opened my laptop. The first thing I saw was an email. From the very same Nubac contractor. Now the official one. "Are you willing to return as an external technical consultant on the CR7 project? With full autonomy and open authorship." I reread it twice. Then I got up, walked across the room. Looked at myself in the mirror. No jacket. No badge. Just me. "Yes," I said out loud. "I'm now." I signed the contract. No pathos. No press releases. Just a document that said, in black and white, David West was the author. No dots, no asterisks. Straight up. I didn't go back to the company. I went back to control. And I did it on my own terms. The job went quickly. I already knew how things should be, only now no one was stopping me from optimizing ideas for the sake of accountability. The team was new. But motivated. They weren't office survivalists. These were people who had come to build. And I felt like we weren't just doing a project. We're building something of our own. And at this time, QSYS announced an internal process audit. Michael Royce was rumored to have been moved to a strategic role with no direct management. Melanie, on pause. Reports on hold. Officially, of course, no one lost. But in corporate parlance, an audit is like a fire on a ship, already smoking, but everyone pretends it's just a technical glitch. One day I got a phone call. Not a number, but a name, Hank. The same old director. His voice was tired but alive. "David," I read the whole thing. "Look, it's a shame about that time." "Too late, Hank. I'm not holding a grudge. Just know that you could have stood by me. You chose to disappear. But it doesn't matter now. You know," he said after a pause, "if you start something of your own, I'd like to help. For real. Not like before." I didn't answer. I just nodded. And then I remembered he couldn't see. A month passed. The first report was completed. The project was up and running. It's clean. Running like clockwork. No bugs. No holes. And most importantly, with respect for those who made it happen. I went outside. Same park. Same bench. Same pigeon. Only now I'm different. Because in this city again, there's a name that can't be erased. And that name is mine.